Some truths were buried because the kingdom feared them. Naya frowned softly. What does that mean?
Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome back to another amazing African folktale. Tonight's story is filled with mystery, drama, and powerful lessons. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, let the story begin.
The morning after the terrifying encounter inside the shrine, an unnatural silence covered the kingdom of Obinna. No drums echoed through the village, no traders opened their stalls, even the wind itself felt heavy. Villagers moved nervously through the pathways, whispering among themselves while keeping fearful eyes on the secret forest. Word had already spread everywhere. The twins had been seen inside the forbidden shrine, and now people believed the old stories were becoming real. Near the edge of the village, Baba Kande sat quietly inside his shrine hut while white smoke from burning herbs curled slowly around the room. Naya sat near the fire, wrapped in a cloth blanket, her long black braids falling over her shoulders while fear remained visible in her tired eyes. Across from her, Zuri stood near the doorway with her arms folded tightly. The tension between the sisters still remained, but after what they witnessed inside the forest, something had changed. For the first time in years, they were afraid of the same thing. Silence filled the hut until Zuri finally spoke. Enough hiding. Her sharp eyes turned toward Baba Kande. You know what that spirit is. The old priest remained quiet. Zuri stepped forward angrily. People are terrified. Animals are dying. The village is falling apart. Her voice hardened. Tell us the truth. Baba Kande slowly lowered his head. The fire crackled softly between them. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then the old priest whispered. Some truths were buried because the kingdom feared them. Naya frowned softly. What does that mean? The priest looked toward the sacred forest outside, his cloudy eyes filled with pain. Long ago, Obinna was not the peaceful kingdom you know today. The room became completely silent. The old priest slowly began speaking. Many years before the twins were born, the sacred shrine deep inside the forest was once the spiritual heart of the kingdom. The people believed the ancestors protected Obinna through the shrine, and guarding that shrine was a young spiritual woman named Adaoma. She was respected throughout the kingdom for her wisdom, kindness, and connection to the ancestors. Villagers traveled from distant lands seeking her blessings and guidance. But not everyone loved her. Several powerful elders within the kingdom secretly became greedy. They wanted control over the shrine's spiritual power. At first, they performed forbidden rituals in secret, hoping to gain wealth and influence. But the rituals slowly corrupted them. The priest's voice became weaker. Adaoma discovered what they were doing. Naya listened carefully while Zuri's expression darkened. She threatened to expose them before the kingdom. The fire suddenly flickered violently. The wind outside grew stronger. Baba Kande tightened his grip on his staff. The elders feared losing their power. Silence. Then he finally whispered the words that had haunted him for years. So they silenced her. Naya's eyes widened slowly. Zuri clenched her jaw. The old priest closed his eyes painfully. One stormy night, the elders dragged Adaoma into the forest beside the sacred shrine. She begged them to stop, but fear and greed had already poisoned their hearts. Nobody in the kingdom came to help her. Nobody questioned her disappearance afterward. The elders told the villagers she abandoned Obinna willingly, and slowly, the truth disappeared. The hut became completely silent except for the sound of the fire. Naya's voice trembled softly. The spirit inside the shrine? Baba Kande nodded slowly. Adaoma never found peace. A cold wind moved through the hut. The twins exchanged uneasy looks. Then Zuri spoke again. What does that have to do with us? The priest stared at both sisters carefully. On the night you were born, the ancestors answered the kingdom's buried sin. Naya's breathing slowed. Baba Kande pointed gently toward the sisters. You were never cursed. The fire suddenly burned brighter. You were chosen. The room fell silent again. The priest explained that the twins carried different pieces of the kingdom's spiritual wound. Naya carried the sorrow. Zuri carried the rage. Together, their hatred reflected the pain that had remained trapped inside Obinna for generations. The sisters stared at him in shock. Everything suddenly began making terrible sense. The anger, the nightmares, the voices, the visions, none of it truly belonged to them. Naya lowered her eyes slowly. For the first time in her life, she no longer felt hatred towards Zuri, only sadness. Meanwhile, outside the shrine hut, villagers slowly began gathering nearby. Rumors spread quickly that Baba Kande was finally revealing the kingdom's hidden secret. Fear turned into tension. Tension turned into anger. Some villagers blamed the elders, others blamed the twins. The entire kingdom felt ready to break apart. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed outside. Everyone inside the hut froze. Another scream followed. Then shouting, panic. Panic was erupting in the village square. People were running in every direction. Children cried while fires burst suddenly from cooking huts without explanation. And standing in the center of the square was the spirit woman, Adana. For the first time, the entire kingdom saw her clearly. Her white clothing flowed violently in the wind. Her long dark hair moved across her face unnaturally. Pain filled her hollow eyes. Villagers dropped to their knees in terror. Some screamed prayers, others ran. The surviving elders stood frozen with fear spreading across their old faces. The spirit slowly lifted her head. Then she spoke. Her voice echoed across the entire kingdom like thunder.
You buried the truth.
The wind exploded violently across Obinna. Dust filled the air. Doors slammed open. The sacred trees bent dangerously. And suddenly, every elder who helped hide Adana's death collapsed painfully to the ground. The villagers stared in horror because dark marks had begun appearing across the elders' bodies like spreading shadows. Baba Kande's expression changed instantly. He looked toward the twins urgently because deep inside, he realized something terrifying. Adana no longer wanted only the truth. Now she wanted judgment. The storm over Obinna grew worse before nightfall. Dark clouds twisted across the sky, while violent winds tore through the kingdom like angry spirits searching for blood. Villagers hid inside their huts, praying desperately as fires burned across parts of the village square. And in the middle of the chaos, Adana's spirit stood motionless. Her white clothing moved wildly within the storm, while glowing dust circled around her feet. The dark marks spreading across the elders' bodies continued growing darker. Their painful screams echoed across the village. Some villagers cried in fear. Others shouted angrily at the elders, demanding answers. Years of hidden lies were finally breaking apart before everyone's eyes. Inside the confusion, Baba Kande stepped slowly toward the spirit woman. Despite the violent wind pushing against him, the old priest forced himself forward. Adana, he called softly. The spirit's hollow eyes turned toward him. Pain, grief, rage, all of it burned inside her expression at once. The old priest lowered his head. The truth has finally returned. But Adana's voice thundered across the kingdom. Too late! The ground shook violently beneath everyone's feet. Villagers screamed as cracks spread across the earth near the sacred square. Several huts collapsed partially, while frightened children cried loudly. Naya watched the destruction with tears filling her eyes. She's losing control. Zuri clenched her fist tightly. for the first time in her life, she did not feel anger toward her sister, only fear of losing everything around them. Suddenly, Elder Jabari collapsed forward before the spirit. The dark marks across his skin spread toward his face like black veins. Tears rolled down the old man's cheeks. At last, the fear he had hidden for decades finally broke him. "We killed you," he cried. The entire village became silent. Even the storm itself seemed to pause. The elder's voice trembled painfully. "We were afraid of losing power, afraid the kingdom would turn against us." More elders slowly fell to their knees beside him. Shame covered their faces. One by one, they confessed everything. How they used the sacred shrine for forbidden rituals. How greed poisoned them. How they dragged Adana into the forest during the storm. How they buried the truth afterward. Villagers stared in complete shock. Some cried. Others looked at the elders with horror and disgust. The kingdom they trusted had been built upon betrayal. Adana's spirit stood silently listening. The rage inside the storm slowly weakened, but not completely. Years of pain still burned inside her. Then, suddenly, a powerful scream escaped the spirit woman. The storm exploded violently again. The spirit's sorrow had become too strong. Windows shattered, trees bent violently, villagers were thrown onto the ground by the wind. Baba Kande shouted desperately, "If her pain consumes her now, Obanla will fall with her." Naya looked toward Zuri. Fear filled both their eyes. But deep inside, they finally understood something. The spirit's hatred survived because hatred had always survived inside them too. All their lives, they had fed the same pain without knowing it. Naya slowly stepped forward into the storm. The wind whipped through her long black braids violently. Zuri grabbed her arm immediately. "You can't stop this alone." Naya looked at her sister. For years, they had looked at each other with nothing but anger. But now, for the first time, they truly saw each other, not as enemies, as sisters. Tears filled Naya's eyes. "Then stand with me." Silence passed between them. Then, slowly, Zuri released her grip on the knife in her hand. The weapon fell into the dirt below, and without another word, she stepped beside her sister. The storm roared around them as the twins walked together toward Adana's spirit. Villagers stared in disbelief. The closer the sisters moved toward the spirit, the more violently the wind screamed around them. But neither stopped walking. Naya spoke first. Her voice shook with emotion. "They stole your truth." Then Zuri continued, "But we will not let your pain destroy innocent people anymore." Adana's spirit stared at them silently. The storm began slowing. Naya carefully reached for Zuri's hand. For a brief second, Zuri hesitated. Then she held it tightly. At that exact moment, a powerful spiritual light burst from the twins. The wind exploded outward across the kingdom. White energy surrounded the village square, while the storm clouds above began breaking apart. Adana's spirit suddenly froze. Her expression changed. The rage inside her eyes slowly faded. And beneath all the pain, peace finally appeared. Tears rolled gently down her face. The twins stood together holding each other's hands while the spiritual light surrounded them. Then Adana spoke one final time, softly, almost peacefully. "Thank you." Her body slowly began dissolving into glowing white particles. The violent storm vanished instantly. The dark clouds above Obanla slowly opened. Warm sunlight touched the kingdom once again. Villagers stared upward in stunned silence as the glowing light carrying Adana's spirit rose peacefully into the sky. The dark marks covering the elders disappeared. The wind became calm. The sacred forest finally became quiet again. No whispers, no cries, only silence, peaceful silence. Baba Kande slowly fell to his knees with tears in his eyes. The curse that haunted Obanla for generations was finally over. And in the center of the village square, Naya and Zuri stood side by side beneath the sunlight. No hatred, no rage, only understanding. At last, the twins were finally sisters.
And that is the end of our story for today. If this story gave you chills or taught you something powerful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps this channel grow and bring you more deep, powerful stories like this. Turn on your notifications so you never miss the next story, because the next one might be even darker. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay wise. See you in the next story.